Currently, Earth. On June 30th in 1859, Charles Blondin, a Frenchman, becomes the first daredevil to walk across Niagara Falls on a tightrope. The feat, which was performed 160 feet above the Niagara Gorge, just downriver from the falls, was witnessed by some 5,000 spectators. Wearing pink tights and a yellow tunic, Blondin crossed a cable about 2 inches in diameter and 1,100 feet long with only a balancing pole to protect him from plunging into the dangerous rapids below. It was the first in a series of famous Niagara tightrope walks performed by the Great Blondin from 1859 to 1860. These ascensions, as he advertised, always had different theatrical variations, including doing tightrope walks blindfolded in a sack with his manager on his back, sitting down midway to cook an omelet, and pushing a wheelbarrow across while dressed as an ape. In 1861, he performed at the Crystal Palace in London, turning somersaults on stilts on a rope stretched 170 feet above the ground. Charles Blondin, also known as Jean-Francois Gravelet, continued his eternity in 1897. On June 30th in 1934, in Germany, Nazi leader Adolf Hitler orders a bloody purge of his own political party, assassinating hundreds of Nazis whom he believed had the potential to become political enemies in the future. The leadership of the Nazi stormtroopers, whose 4 million members had helped bring Hitler to power in the early 1930s, was especially targeted. Hitler feared that some of his own followers had taken his early National Socialism propaganda too seriously and thus might compromise his plans to suppress workers' rights in exchange for German industry making the country war-ready. In the early 1920s, the ranks of Hitler's Nazi Party swelled with resentful Germans who sympathized with the party's bitter hatred of Germany's democratic government, leftist politics, and Jews. In November 1923, after the German government resumed the payment of war reparations to Britain and France, the Nazis launched the Birrachala Putsch, their first attempt at seizing the German government by force. Hitler hoped that his nationalist revolution in Bavaria would spread to the dissatisfied German army, which in turn would bring down the government in Berlin. However, the uprising was immediately suppressed, and Hitler was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison for high treason. Sent to Landsberg jail, he spent his time dictating his autobiography Mein Kampf and working on his oratorical skills. After 9 months in prison, political pressure from supporters of the Nazi Party forced his release. During the next few years, Hitler and the other leading Nazis reorganized their party as a fanatical mass movement. In 1932, President Paul von Hindenburg defeated a presidential bid by Hitler, but in January 1933, he appointed Hitler chancellor, hoping that the powerful Nazi leader could be brought to heel as a member of the president's cabinet. Paul von Hindenburg underestimated Hitler's political audacity, and one of the new chancellor's first acts was to use the burning of the Reichstag building as a pretext for calling general elections. The police under Nazi Hermann Göring suppressed much of the party's opposition before the election. The Nazi Party joined forces with the DNVP, or the German National People's Party. They did this to gain a bare working majority in the Reichstag. Shortly thereafter, Hitler established carte blanche through the Enabling Acts. In 1934, Hindenburg continued his eternity, and the last remnants of Germany's democratic government were dismantled, leaving Hitler the sole master of a nation intent on war and genocide. On June 30th, in 1981, Glenn Godwin, a young business owner, is convicted of murder in Riverside County, California, and sentenced to 26 years to life in prison. According to his roommate's testimony, Godwin stomped on, choked, and then stabbed Kim LaValle, an acquaintance and local drug dealer, 28 times before using homemade explosives to blow up his body in the desert near Palm Springs. Godwin, who had no previous record, eventually found his way onto the FBI's 10 most wanted list. In 1985, while serving his sentence at Soledad Prison, Godwin married Shelley Rose. He was then transferred to Folsom Prison, a maximum security facility where he escaped through a 300-yard storm drain and floated across the American River on a raft to freedom in June of 1987. Apparently gaining assistance from someone who cut the iron bars on the storm drain from the outside, Godwin was the third person to escape from Folsom in 25 years. Lorenz Karlik, who had once shared a cell with Godwin, was arrested in Hesperia, California, for aiding Godwin in his escape. After 2 years without any leads on either Glenn or Shelley, who was last seen renting a car at the San Jose airport, authorities were notified of a man in a Mexican prison under the name of Stuart Carrera, whose fingerprints matched those of Godwin's. Reportedly, Mexican authorities had arrested Glenn on drugs and weapons charges 6 months after his escape. While California officials were working to have Godwin extradited back to the United States, he murdered a fellow inmate in Puerto Vallarta prison, an attempt to avoid returning to the high-security prisons in California. Shortly thereafter, he escaped from the Mexican jail. In December 1996, Godwin appeared on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Shelley Godwin, who, unbeknownst to California law enforcement officials, had divorced her husband and remarried in Texas, was apprehended in Dallas when a story on the Godwin case appeared on television's America's Most Wanted. But Glenn Godwin remains at large. Glenn Godwin was removed from the Most Wanted list in May of 2016. All historic information documented on this audio file can be verified on History.com.